Okay, let's now get across today's headlines with Sky News senior reporter Cam Redden. More than 200 000 emergency calls were unable to go through on the day of the Optus outage. Cam, great to see you. The chief executive, well, she was hammered essentially.
Yeah, good evening to you, Erin. It was a good old-fashioned smash-up. It was part Senate hearing, part roller derby, as we've seen a few of these this year when the Qantas, now ex-chief executive Alan Joyce, came to Canberra, when the former governor of the Reserve Bank, Philip Lowe, was here too. You just get this pile-on from senators all across the political divide, shelving their allegiances for the day almost to capitalise on the community sentiment and really ask the tough questions of Optus today. And there was also this added element of theatre. We saw one moment throughout the exit of the chief executive going out through the car park of Parliament House, surrounded by this police guard when a few journalists were trying to get some questions to her on the way out. It really gave you a sense of the theatre of the day. Take a look.
Speyer Rosmarin, do you regret how Optus handled the outage? Please don't push me out of the way.
So pretty extraordinary scenes at the end of this hearing today. What we did learn, though, in terms of the substance, Erin, out of this was a little bit more about the compensation that's being discussed. We learned today from Optus that around 8,500 customers, many of them small businesses, are already in talks about compensation. The figure that's been put forward is that it could amount to more than $430,000. Already $36,000 of that has been paid out. But what Optus couldn't tell us is exactly what that compensation is. Is it free data? Is it higher limits, better speeds? They simply didn't have that information. Also questioning today after the horrid 12 months that Optus has had between a cyber hack and this latest significant outage about the future of the chief executive, questions she wasn't keen to buy in on today.
Is it your intention to resign?
Senator, I'm sure you can appreciate my entire focus has been on restoring the outage issue.
Could I just ask you to answer that question?
And it has not been a time to be thinking about myself.
Could you address that question? Are you intending to resign?
I thought I answered the question.
Yeah, well, I suspect compensation will not come in cash, or they'll do everything to avoid that. Let's move on, Cam. Our Prime Minister, Mr Albanese, is overseas again. What did he have to say at the APEC meeting today? I think he got a little frustrated with reporters.
Yeah, no shortage of meetings as summit season rolls on, Erin. There were meetings today with the Governor of California. There was an event with the Vice President Kamala Harris. Plenty of discussions today around trade in the Pacific, as well as cooperation on things like climate change, renewable energy, quite common themes for many of these summits. But when you look at the past month that the Prime Minister has had, he's flying home back to Australia this weekend. They've taken him from the White House to Beijing, to the Cook Islands for the Pacific Islands Forum, and now to San Francisco. All the way along, he's defended the volume and the importance of that travel. But this one, and particular the response from the opposition, you heard a moment ago from Michaelia Cash, this one has been different. There's been a very pointed criticism of the Prime Minister, accusing him of being asleep at the wheel at a time when there's a lot happening at home. We saw the response to this High Court decision, which has seen a scramble in the last 24 hours yesterday in Parliament to get through these emergency visa restrictions that could be put on the more than 80 people who were released as a result of that decision. The Prime Minister was quizzed about this in San Francisco today. We know yesterday, we reported on Sky, that Richard Marles and a delegation of senior ministers sat down with Peter Dutton to thrash out the details. The Prime Minister adamant, though, that he wasn't out of the loop of those conversations.
I was fully involved. We've responded to an issue back in Australia that's a result of a decision by the High Court of Australia. We've responded appropriately.
It's interesting, Cam. I was just thinking, Joe Biden, remember, cancelled his trip to Australia because he had the debt ceiling, so significant domestic issues at home. So he was comfortable doing that. So it's a very different case. Just quickly, Joe Biden, I think he's gotten it right once and for all. Dictator, what's happened with that?
Interestingly, Erin, this comment he's made twice in quite recent months. It's a comment, we're talking about the Chinese president, Xi Jinping. He first referred to him as a dictator in June, and today was asked, after 4 hours of meetings with the Chinese president and a big walk around yesterday, another warm handshake in San Francisco today, on American soil, mind you, which is quite significant. He was asked again today, after all of that, do you still think that President Xi is a dictator? Here's what he said. Take a look.
Would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that we used earlier this year.
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a communist country.
The footage has been pretty widely shared today of the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Didn't look all that impressed as the president was making that comment. A little shake of the head, a wince. It's a bit like someone sort of stepped on his toe or something.
Or no, he stepped on Lego, I think, Cam. That's the better one.
I think he might. Well, I mean, we as journalists, Erin, get a bit frustrated about some of the language around here. We say, give us a straight answer, stop dancing on eggshells. But I guess that goes to the nature of diplomacy, really. You contrast the comments of the president with the language used by Prime Minister Albanese today, much more precise.
Well, we have different political systems from China, as I've said consistently. Australia's a democracy. China has a very different political system. They don't have democratic elections.
So there you go, Erin. A little difference in the exact language used, but I suppose in terms of the D word, no mention there from the Prime Minister.
I don't envy them. It is a tightrope. Cam, thank you so much. Brilliant.